Welcome to the Art of Pricing. I think this is episode 8. I should maybe do a little better at counting things. This has been so much fun, and I'm honored today to be joined by Matt Loney from Xplorie, President and CEO, who is calling in from Hawaii. So he got up early for us, and we may have some visitors. His daughters might jump in whenever they wake up. So we have Brian Hamaoui. I said it correct this time.
Well done.
Brian is a longtime industry vet, former stylist, and is starting his own company, Allevo Homes. Am I saying that right?
Allevo Homes.
Allevo Homes. Okay, apparently my pronunciations aren't the best. And then we have, of course, Cliff Johnson from Rented. And today we want to talk about activities, experiences, how to promote these, and what to think about when you're thinking about monetizing activities and experiences. You know, we had a great practice session yesterday, and I got to say the theme that really came out of it is when you're thinking about monetizing and increasing revenue from the experiences and activities in the area, it's more about creating a brand that offers activities, experiences in the area, and how does that compare you to others in the area? Because it is kind of, we'll get to the data section, but it's a little hard to collect data on who's actually using the experiences in your area. So I want to go ahead and start off with Brian. There were some things that you brought up yesterday that were interesting at the beginning, saying, where does the journey start for the customer? You were saying like, that's what you really kind of need to think in your head first. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, and I think before we even dive into that, I think what's important is we're a newish industry. The technology that's being developed in this industry is all fairly new. The data that we're getting is new. Trying to understand all of that data together is new. And so companies like yourselves, like Rented, helping us as property managers understand the revenue side is really important. There's an added element to that, which is, all about the brand and the experience, building brand experiences inside of homes and in making yourself a little bit different from everybody else that's in the marketplace.
I think that is a great point. And not to interject there, but this is something that I say all the time and you hear all the time. I think that data is so new in our industry, right? Like 3 to 5 years new. Like we've had data before, but being able to compile that data, read that data, and use that data is still really new. And I think we forget that sometimes. It's like what we have at our fingertips today, but are you reading it correctly and using it the way that it's supposed to be used? And is it the right data? There's just so much out there. But anyway, back to you, Brian.
Yeah. And so when I start to think about new revenue, and especially when it comes to guest experiences, where do you start with the journey, right? Where do you start with the customer experience? And what kind of tools do you really start to implement in order to be able to deliver that guest experience to the guest and represent the home the right way? And there's a ton of different tools that are being developed in the marketplace. I mean, I started with the guest experience platform back in 2012, 2013, when we launched our first guest app. And it was a pretty revolutionary application. We were trying to do API integrations with tours and activities and be able to deliver that at the very beginning of the guest journey. So as soon as a guest books, they would receive their welcome email, and then they would be introduced into things that they could do in the local market, which is something very similar. I think that Xplorie does at the moment. They do it extremely, extremely well, and I'll let Matt talk about that. But is that the right time to start presenting guest experiences? Is it after they've booked the home? Could it be sooner than that? And how do you present it to the guest?
I think, that's perfect. I mean, exactly what you're saying. And the only reason I'm interjecting there, because that was the exact segue that I was going to take it, is like, when is the right time to be presenting to the guests? Is it before booking? Is it while they're thinking about traveling, right? I know we can't read guest minds. Some OTAs think they can, but we're getting there, reading everyone's mind. So, Matt, I want to go to you on there, because you made up some great points yesterday about when should you bring it up and what's your biggest asset as a property manager.
Well, Yeah, and look, ideally, you absolutely should bring it up, right? You should highlight all of the value adds, whether it's tours and attractions, hot tubs, your Keurig coffee, whatever it is that you feel like
Everything.
moves the needle. If you're not using it effectively, what I'll call in the planning stage, right, in the research stage, then I think it limits it to more of what I would call a guest loyalty, which is not bad, but you're only probably using 50% of the value of that value add. So here, where we're talking about tours and attractions, to the extent that you can really leverage those through your own site, book direct, you've got complete, maybe not complete control, because some of the property managers are, they've got a template that they need to work within, but you've got a lot of control over what you're really highlighting, in your banners on your websites and things like that. And so utilizing your local tours and attractions, the location of your units, in proximity to the things people are coming to your market to do and that they're interested in, I think is critical. And I think, going back to your data point, the reason people don't do that as much right now is because we kind of lack the data of what are people doing, what are they asking about, what are they interested in, and therefore we kind of feel like we're just kind of guessing a little bit into what to highlight. And so as we get better on the data side, it'll allow groups like Rented to get better on the, on the yield management, kind of setting the rate management based on those value adds of the activities and stuff like that. And so one just kind of feeds the other.
Totally. And I really like how you kind of pointed out, like, amenities, activities, and experiences are going to be very different for area, whatever area you're in. And it also a lot of ranges. Brian is around the Orlando area, so not in Orlando, but he's got way more attractions and everything than someone who is in Okaloosa Island. There's more of the beach, but I really like, you when I'm talking activities, yes, I am talking water parks, I am talking Orlando studios, but I'm also talking activities like putt-putt golf or experiences. Where can I go sit on a patio and have a cup of coffee? Brian, you said that yesterday, and I underestimated how big that is in my head, because I tell you what, I love to see there's a coffee maker at a vacation rental, right? It doesn't do me much justice if there's no coffee there, and I'm busy. Right there. Or where can I read a book?
That's a really good point. Each
Mhm.
destination, guests that are looking for those destinations are looking for very specific things in those destinations.
Mhm.
And so, if you are in a very rural area, you're up in the mountains, you're in front of a lake, do you have canoes? Do you have bikes? Do you have, what kind of things can you either rent or give as an added value proposition for people to book your home over others? Those are
Exactly.
people are looking for.
And you need to
Yep.
make sure that you're advertising this in the beginning so they can see it, whether that be on your OTA, right? Like, we were kind of saying like OTAs are a disadvantage when it comes to advertising activities and experiences, because they're like a more one size fits all solution. But that's where, the asset that Matt's saying about, your website is your biggest asset, and highlighting your market from the very beginning and the experiences, activities in the market not only sets you apart, right? And lets the travelers know before they book, right, what you offer,
Right.
but it brings your market up as well. You are as good as your market is, right? And bringing revenue up for everyone in your market is good. Cliff, I can bring it to you because I'd be interested to know how you guys did this in the past of Acasa, but how did y'all gauge, like, what kind of travelers were coming into different markets and the experiences or activities that they may want to do? Like, how did y'all use the data?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely push, that journey, that customer journey, to Brian's point, to that search. And the search is not just the properties they want, but it's also the market. So there's activity happening across the web, where they're doing some research. Where do they want to go? What do they want to do when they get there? But the more you can give them of that information on your site, the more captive they become in that place. And one of the things we found across all the markets we'd work in was the farther people were traveling, the less they tended to know about the market, and the more they wanted to know about what they could do when they were there. So we did see a really big correlation between like our pre-arrival communication being much higher on guests that were traveling to say Belize or Costa Rica than it would be for guests traveling from Portland to the Oregon coast, who might already be pretty familiar with what they like about that destination. And then the other thing that I think might be an interesting point to look at, because I think it was an advantage that we had at Vacasa, was that we had, for me, you know, being based in Portland, I didn't pretend I knew all the local secrets of Jaco, Costa Rica, but my local manager there did. But they, because they knew all that, had the disadvantage of thinking, well, yeah, everybody knows about this. Like they devalue their knowledge. And so what we see in vacation rentals is that a lot of managers really work in one market, and a lot of times like have trouble conveying to guests what is special about that place. Like they know it intrinsically, but they're just making a lot of assumptions about what people already know because they have so much tribal knowledge of that location. So I think it's helpful to have somebody that doesn't know your market come evaluate your site and see if they understand what that, you know, what the market offers, but more importantly, are you conveying that through the property? Mostly through the photos, headlines. People don't read descriptions, we know that. So how are you giving them the visual of the experience they will think they can have?
That's
It's
a
interesting.
really interesting point. Matt's
Yeah. Well, I was just going to mention, you know, one of the things we were looking at is, to your point, Cliff, is, you know, a partner of ours, True Place, you know, we've started to experiment with also creating little local maps that show your proximity to certain attractions and certain activities, you know, go beyond the floor plan, right? And get outside of the four walls. Because Cliff's right. How do you convey this, especially on the OTAs where you don't have as much control? Is very difficult. People don't really want to read descriptions. You'll see a lot of Xplorie clients. It says, you know, where we used to put the name, right? Every homeowner wants to name their property, so we'd put the name. Well, now, you know, it's very common for our clients. They'll put 3-bedroom, 2-bath with complimentary golf. Like that's the name of their unit because they're trying to get clicks. They want to, you know, and that's how they should be looking at it. So I think that's really interesting.
And, you know, we had True Place on a few weeks ago, and I met with their VP of marketing, and she just so happened to be in Austin around that time, and she showed me those maps, and they're really, you know, it's really great. It's you know, we were just at the VR May Connect conference in Destin, and everything in our industry, I have to tell you, the theme was about thinking outside the box and how do we show people the value or continue to want to come, you know, to make memories with us rather than hotels. And that was one big thing that she said. And I also love that everyone is agreeing that people do not read descriptions. I have this conversation so many times, and there is so much pushback. I mean, for 10 years now, this conversation. And that's where, you know, you hear people, I often hear you have the opportunity to put 55 photos, maybe give or take a couple, on Airbnb and Vrbo. And everyone's like, I have a condo that I can't put enough stuff in there, or I just can't fill it 55. You can. You have a market to highlight. And in there, you also have photo captions. People may actually read, they read that and look at a photo way more than they're going to look at your description. So, you know, utilize this area.
Yeah, we actually found that was pretty important when we started to put together some listings, which is showcase, you know, your first 5 or 10 photos, make sure that they're super, super sharp, describe them really well. That actually added a lot of conversion to those units, just adding the brief descriptions. What, you know, if you have a bedroom, don't put 1-bedroom unit with a bed. Everybody has a 1-bedroom with a bed in it. Tell us about the bed. Is it a plush bed? Does it have, you know, nice
relax
pillows
with your family in this entertainment room? I probably talk about photo captions on every single one of these, and if you've ever talked to me before, you know, you probably heard me say that. But yeah, it's just, you know, highlight it in the areas with the photos and give people the ability to do so. One point I want to touch on, because I thought, like, I think Matt, you had the interesting take on this, was I was like, how do you, both Matt and Brian actually, so however we want to go with this is, you know, should you partner with businesses in the area, or should you just highlight the area? Is it worth going and talking to mom and pops and getting a coupon code for people that stay at your house? And I want to look at this on a few different perspectives, right? Pre and post pandemic, we know right now, like we're saying, you know, especially the Florida Gulf Coast and just like beach markets are just slammed with pent up demand. even the restaurants, no one can handle the amount of demand that's coming in. So today they don't need more. But before the pandemic, were they more inclined to partner with people? Or should you just be highlighting it?
I mean, for me, honestly, I'd go to first the easiest way to start this, because it can be super time consuming. The one thing that you don't want to do is take your attention off of your business and try to concentrate
Time.
on.
We all know that lack of time is a very common thing we have in this industry.
And it depends on the size of your business, right? I mean, if you have a full-blown marketing team and they're dedicated to being able to put together a guest experience, fantastic. So what I would suggest is really understanding your local market and publish the things that you know are good, because they're a representation of you. So whatever you're going to recommend, make sure that those recommendations are actually good recommendations. The customers will come back and say, well, you told me to go to such and such a place. It was terrible. And that's the
Right.
last thing that you want to have, right? Once you've got that ironed out, I think that you have the bandwidth, you can do two things. You can either partner with somebody like Xplorie, where they have gone into the local markets and they have partnerships already established, and they can showcase those and they can sell the tickets. That's one way to do it. And if you want to take that a step further and spend some time partnering with people, it requires, having some sort of a contract, understanding of what you're offering them and what they can offer in return. And then how to track that. And then that becomes a little bit even more difficult, because again, it comes down to data. And I think Matt probably has more on that than I do.
Yeah, Matt, I want to hear what you have to say, because I mean, obviously, you've done it all and you advise it all.
Yeah. And my answer might kind of surprise people in that I would say, look, I think this is true of anything. Do it if you can do it really well, right? It's no different than, your rate management, I think, but also understand what your limitations are and what your goals are. And if you can't deliver the experience or deliver the results, whether it's rate management or tours and attractions that you believe you need to, then that's where you need to really research and understand what your third party partners are, and your options are. And so my experience has been that it is very difficult. I mean, I joke with our team all the time. When we run into issues, I say, look, guys, if this was easy, people wouldn't need us, right? I mean, so this is hard. We've spent the last 3 years building software, and we continue to build software so that our destination guides, which kind of serve as concierge in all these markets, can instantly book all these activities. And we host the tickets on a URL so that when a guest makes modifications, it's the same URL, except now it's 2 adult tickets, not 4 adult tickets. And that's really hard, right?
And now you have voice, right?
Yeah, we've now partnered with Amazon to deliver, information in the unit to guests via a personal assistant. And so, we feel like that's what our clients expect. That's why they partner with us, right? Is we're going to keep pushing the envelope and we're going to make their life easier. And even with restaurants, one of the things you'll hear from property managers is, oh, I did a deal with so-and-so, and I sent my guest down there and told them, just mention us, you get 10% off. In the first summer, there's some well-intentioned 17-year-old waiting tables, and they turn to the guest and go, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't get a discount, right? What a terrible experience. So, my experience has been, if you want to just make recommendations, to Brian's point, make really good recommendations, like, the best burger in town, and just let them go and experience it.
Right.
If you're going to start getting into the operations of pushing them tickets and doing this, be prepared. It's a very difficult, and as you step further into it, the expectation of the guest is that it will be seamless. And so if you can't deliver that, I think you want to be careful.
Right. Totally. And I think that's a great point to have. And I agree. Your insight is surprising, right? Like it was surprising to me yesterday. And I'm, thinking of like myself, and I think we know I'm kind of like a lazy traveler. I don't know. I just like things to fall in my feet whenever I'm going to do things. But agreed, like, if there's a ticket there, like on there and availability, like for like buy one and then, get one free. Yeah, maybe that's going to help me out. But more than anything, I want to easily know what is in the proximity for me to be able to go to. And and that I may want to go to. And this kind of led to an interesting part of our conversation yesterday, right? Are making sure the listing is the listing if it's a condo versus a house, right? That the experiences, activities that you were tying to each property actually fit with the demographic of the traveler that's coming in. Cliff, do you want to expand upon that?
Yeah, if it's something I was going to add as well. I mean, so I think a lot of times, thinking through the lens of the demographic of the people that are choosing individual properties is really important. So if you're trying to, like, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but like trying to sell, an expensive like yacht charter to somebody that's booking $100 a night condo is a mismatch, whereas you might want to have that as an option, but for the people that are booking your luxury oceanfront homes. And like the one thing I was going to bring this all back to as well is that one thing that we've seen for years in vacation rentals, and it's been more pronounced over the past year, is that unique sells. And so I think there's a place for both kind of commoditization, like we know they're going for Disney, so like have a way to buy Disney tickets or something like that, but also like giving them options that fit the property. So if it's a property that's really good for family reunions, like have a family reunion package that kind of takes the thinking out for them, so it's repeatable yet unique to their experience. So like having an option to get like custom t-shirts or something made that are there at the house when they're there, like something that really like can resonate and make their experience special. But if you make it a repeatable process where you just have like a menu of like 5 to 10 different things where you can use local vendors to fulfill these things and take that off of their plate, that can be really meaningful. I've seen that done really well. The problem is, to both Matt and Brian about this, if you fail at it, that's worse than not having it at all. If you're like, oh yeah, get your t-shirts then. Oh yeah, they're not done. You just arrived and there's nothing there. So boxing things in that are really reliable and repeatable. But like I think the simplest stuff is starting with something like an anniversary package where you use a local florist. And it's something that, we say we're busy and as managers, our guests are really busy and they definitely don't have time. Like they're used to living in cities a lot of times where you can get a next day delivery without a problem, not, oh, you have to call Bob 3 days in advance to order the roses that you want, So like kind of putting those in front of them so that you can have some simple things that add value to their stay and that they'll remember for you, but make sure it's something you can consistently execute on.
Do we think that
this is an awesome segue, Talia? I'm sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Back to kind of understanding the guest data and when do you understand guest data? Because if you can capture some of that data on the front before they're even booking the house, you can create that experience from them. Very similar to that is a lot of people are talking about not having return guests or the volume of return guests is diminishing. And I think it's true in a lot of markets only because we have the ability to travel longer
I
distance.
feel that it's very like organic, right? Like they're not going because they didn't like the area. They're not going because we are making vacations easier. So people have more options.
I agree, but there are certain locations that people have some nostalgia with, memories, and they'll still keep going back. And so, and I was talking about this with Matt, I think it was the other day, where if you can capture enough data, things like anniversaries, or understand things that the customers enjoyed, you can always retarget those guests with events that are happening that might apply to those guests. And so now you've got a new tool to be able to reach out to those people with, with some meaning rather than just book a home.
Totally.
I'd say I love birthdays and anniversaries specifically as well, because they're not tied to when demand is always high in your market. So like any type of events that are special to the guest, but not necessarily unique to the market, like those are really good opportunities that's where you should be spending your money. Like if somebody has a birthday in early November, you should be their best friend. Make it a great experience. Right. Make it something they want to come and do every year, Yeah.
We used to do that with the kids. We used to bring in our previous management company, we'd find out if it was a kid's birthday and we'd load the houses up with balloons, birthday cakes with their names on. Like we'd do all of those things. The kids would walk into the house and it was, we'd spend $20, $30 on something like this, but it had such a massive impact on the guest, especially with the kids. We're a family oriented town. So to see as soon as you walk in, your kids are just smiling ear to ear, that makes their entire vacation for the family already.
Y'all have like my wheels spinning in my head because Father's Day is like right around the corner, right? All these fathers on, and I'm the mother thinking of what I'm going to do for my husband who blew Mother's Day away, which was also my birthday, so we had to. But I've been thinking, I'm like, what if I plan like a trip somewhere, and I could get a property manager to basically plant little gifts like in the vacation rental that he could find. Like, if you have the bandwidth as a property manager, how cool of a service would that be?
Yeah.
For a mother, like if I was like I packed and then they contacted me after, they're like, hey, like, are you coming for Father's Day? Here's some ideas that maybe we can help you to prepare the vacation rental. If anyone's interested and wants to reach out to me, I could use help with this. My own little plug to help with my vacations. But yeah, I mean, that's it's this crazy idea, and I've wondered, like, if you have the bandwidth, do we suggest having some kind of guest experience or reservation reps call the guests after they book to see how you can help with anything?
I'd say only if you can execute on it in a repeatable
Only if you
way.
could, yes.
So like what you just told me about what you'd like to do, I would be worried about that as a manager. Because it's like, am I paying somebody for 3 hours of hiding gifts around something?
Right.
Instead, that's where I think it's good to have like a menu that people
Right.
can choose from if they do want something special.
Right, like something offer that you can do, like some, a menu that's in there. I don't know how much my husband would appreciate roses, but like a menu. You never know. But I do want to, last 3 minutes, I do want to close out with Matt. Let's talk about the data that is available and what should managers be asking themselves and looking at.
Yeah, so you want to look at a number of things, but I think there were some really good points made, and I think it's now been a little bit of a theme, right? It's repeatable, scalable for these property managers because we can run around and do a lot, right?
Repeatable and scalable.
That's right. And so first, just starting with what are your guests doing when they're in market, right? Like one of the things we love about voice is being able to just understand what questions are being asked of these devices, right, locally. I mean, we've got very tight privacy with Amazon around that, as far as no audio recordings or anything like that, but you do get the general phrase of the questions they're asking. And I tell you what, there's a ton to be gleaned there, right? And tying that to a guest, tying their usage of anything that they did go and do to that guest, to Cliff's point. If somebody was here on an anniversary, and then you also know that they did X, Y, and Z, then you probably know that next year for their anniversary, they may remember, may be interested in coming back and doing those things again. And, maybe it's providing them some of those things complimentary as opposed to offering them 10% off if they'll book their anniversary again next year, right? Because clearly, we talk a lot about how guests are looking for value, but that doesn't mean they're just looking. The only way to talk to a guest about value is not just through your rates.
Right.
You want to push rates, right, and give groups like Rented the ability to the amenities and the activities to really push rate while also providing great value. And so regardless of how you do this, I think as a property manager, if you use a third-party service, one of the questions, whether it's Xplorie or not, you need to be asking, what data do I have? When can I get it? What format can I get it in? Who owns the data? Do you own the data or do I own the data? That's been something that is, more and more sensitive of property managers, and it should be, right? Because you spend all of this money going out and attracting guests, that data is yours, and what, and then how are you going to use it, and make sure you've got a plan to use it and make sure it works with your demographics. As Cliff said, I'm sitting here in Hawaii in a beautiful property that our partner Ola Properties has. And, one of the things we talked early with Ola about Xplorie was, getting guests to repeat bookings in Hawaii is not a big emphasis for Ola, right? I mean, a lot of their guests, this is once every 6 years. So we put more of their emphasis on getting the booking, right? So just know what your goals are and then understand what data you're going to have through these activities and how that'll continue to build on itself.
I love that. I was just thinking, anniversaries, like if you are not retargeting anniversaries, I think that is definitely like the number one thing right now that can help with repeat guests, right? Because if you could just remind someone their anniversary is coming up, how appreciative will they
Right.
be of you?
That's and Talia, and well, and here's the other thing too. The OTAs, they don't have this information.
No, they don't.
Right? They do not know what guests are doing when they get in your market. So you've got to take that and you've got to make it yours. You've got to own it. You've got to put a stake in the ground and email them and go, a year ago, do you remember visiting Dollywood? Right? And the guests go, man, we got to plan a vacation again. Expedia and these guys, they can't send that email. So
Right.
don't try to beat them at a game you're not going to win, right? You're not going to outspend them. So really find a way that you can do this at scale and own that repeat guest.
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much. That 30 minutes, like every other day, goes by so fast with these lunch and learns that are in here. If anyone has any questions, we will have the recording up tomorrow. If you want to talk more to me, Matt and his team, Brian or Cliff, we're all happy to chat with you at any point in time. Thank you guys so much again. Thank you for waking up early, Matt.
Yes.
Brian, it's always a pleasure. I think I've talked to you every day for the past 2 weeks in a good way. Guys, everyone have a great day, have a great week, and I will talk to y'all later.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.